We will get to the cratering of Ron DeSantis's campaign, but what is quite clear that long after Ron DeSantis will have become a footnote in this presidential election, Florida will still be a crap show. And there's a whole raft of problems, like material problems that Florida is facing that Ron DeSantis has either created, exacerbated, or done nothing about. But one of them is what they're doing to their education system. And I mean, we can talk to David Nyward about this as well, because this, I'm sure, is part, at least part of the movement that he writes about. But here is Ron DeSantis. We are sort of on the tail end of a reexamination that has taken place in this country over the past several decades of slavery, of Reconstruction, a reaction to the so-called Dunning School, which is where was an academic history movement, if you will, or school that promoted the idea of the lost cause and an interpretation of the South's motivation in the Civil War that was one, I don't know if it was meant to, probably, to redirect the sense that they were fighting to protect slavery and made it far more sort of like opaque. And the idea that Reconstruction failed in many respects because it gave too much authority to Black people, as opposed to it failed under literal physical assault by white people and a failure of the federal government to come to the aid of Black people in southern states, at least in terms of, beyond those amendments. Here is Ron DeSantis on with CNN's Kit Maher. They have gone after the idea of talking about slavery or civil rights issues or Jim Crow or red line, whatever it is in our history as a country, of the practice of white supremacy and the mechanisms in which that undergirded it. If that was to make any student feel weird about themselves or white people, it has been outlawed in Florida.
Safe space law.
Yes, under the Stop Woke Act or whatever they call it. And they have added to the curriculum the idea that slavery actually provided some material benefit for slaves. This is at a press conference in Salt Lake City, and CNN's Kit Maher asks about this provision in the curriculum.
Your clarification on one thing within the policy. It says instruction includes how slaves develop skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. Could you just explain?
Well, you should talk to them about it. I mean, I didn't do it, and I wasn't involved in it. But I think what they're doing is I think that they're probably going to show some of the folks that eventually parlayed, being a blacksmith into doing things later in life. But the reality is all of that is rooted in whatever is factual. They listed everything out. And if you have any questions about it, just ask the Department of Education. You can talk about those folks. But I mean, these were scholars who put that together. It was not anything that was done politically.
Sure.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, the way that you do this politically is you choose your scholars based upon their political orientation. And again, this is not a question of like saying that, people can't discuss what slaves did after they were freed. For the vast majority of them, the lives were very similar looking to slavery in some respects. Others were able to see some success in certain areas. Of course, you want to talk about that, but to characterize slavery as the way in which they got skills is a bizarre interpretation of
Well,
this.
it's pretty old, right? In that, slavery by slavery defenders was often depicted as benevolent. So this is in some way
Civilizing.
as old as time. And it is racist in its construction in the first part, which is that the slaves were just, people without any skills or without any education prior to being taken to the United States against their will. I mean, it erases some of the technical knowledge that a lot of people had before they were enslaved in this country. And like, what is the skills that they were able to translate into being basically small business owners is the implication. I mean, a lot of this was like put into systems of sharecropping, which was a way to further prevent freed Black people from owning the means of production as well.
He says parlayed, like, yeah, they literally could, the quote unquote blacksmith himself could have been parlayed as an individual. Like he doesn't parlay those skills.
It's about like how slavery was civilizing essentially for Black people. That is the undertone there.
Exactly, that's what it is. Slavery was a civilizing institution.
Which is talk about political. That's not just political. That's white supremacy.
It's Confederate, yeah.
Yeah, or Confederate's more accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is an attempt to both devalue any type of skill sets that existed with slaves, and in fact, it's not hard to find reference within the context of slave markets to people who come from certain regions and having certain backgrounds that might be more amenable for, various tasks. But even if one, like, for instance, we talked about this the other day, that I learned at Monticello, that Jefferson got one of his top enslaved people, if you will, to learn how to cook French meals, and this slave was technically freed when they were in France because they were there during the French Revolution. Jefferson negotiated a deal with him that you will get freed 6 years after returning to the United States, after you transfer those skills that you have learned to someone else who can replace you. I guess it's conceivable that this person went on to, or I guess the implication is like this person could go on to open his own French restaurant after he was, it is the idea is they're trying to say that there was literally benefit to enslaved people from their experience of being enslaved. And this is like saying, your whole family was killed in a car crash, but you really learned how to deal with grief.
Yeah. The whippings, the raping, the starvation in some instances, like that was just a way to kind of build calluses, both figuratively and literally. And then, you could be a real good American bootstrapping person. I mean, it's sick.
Well, we're going to talk to Dave Nywert in just a moment because one of the hallmarks of or the mechanisms in which a society becomes more fascist and authoritarian is through incremental adaptation, adoptions of new edicts, new laws, and just bit by bit. Because the next round of curriculum changes is, well, they also got personal benefit from maybe skills they learned, but broadly speaking, they got personal benefit in that they were brought to a better country, right, or they got housing for free. We'll be talking to David Nywert in just a moment. He's written a new book, The Age of Insurrection, The Radical Right's Assault on American Democracy.